Hi there, this is Ron Rogers, and this video is titled Ground That Student. Now, this relates to when I was a T-37 instructor out advanced in sea flight, and I'm a first assignment plowback type, IP, a FAPE. And man, I've got 300 hours total flight time, 100 in the T-37, and I'm instructing out there. And I had the nickname all through pilot training, and I went through sea flight, and I knew most of the flight instructors I was now working with as a flight instructor, and through 38s, and I had the reputation as, they called me Knit Knocker. When Stanivel would come in, Wing Stanivel, I was the guy chosen to answer the question because I loved getting into details. I think it's part of the engineering thing. But anyway, this is a two-part video because this thing kind of, it's got two parts to it. And it has to do with the particular student. Now, I was a very junior second lieutenant. Okay, don't talk about second lieutenants being junior, period. But as far as even second lieutenants went, I was junior and very senior, very experienced flight commander, kind of a gruff guy. And he said, we got this issue with a student. Now he said he's a bit of a wiseacre. He's smarted off to the couple of flight instructors he flew with. Now I never directly flew with the guy. Okay, I never directly related to him, but I heard some of the debriefings, kind of some of his comments, so I knew where they were coming from. And the flight commander said, he smarted off to his instructors, and he smarted off to me yesterday, and he says, I'm not happy with this guy. And I said, okay. And I could see by the look in his face that he says, what I want you to do is I want you to ground this guy because I was the stand-up officer. And what we do is we have the stand-up briefing and we call on somebody. Okay. Well, okay. I want you to ground him. I said, well, that isn't really the way we operate. And he goes, no. You pick something that he can't answer and you ground him, which is what happened. You'd call on a student, you'd go over in an emergency, okay? You'd kind of dish this emergency out, and then you'd let it settle for a bit, and you'd call on a student. They would have to stand up, and they'd have to tell you exactly how they're going to handle this emergency. And if they get it right, great. If they don't get it right, too bad. Now, I got this little south end of a north-going horse when I was senior flight examiner out at Stanivel at Edwards, and you kind of had to be one of these to do well in Stanivel because you weren't the most loved person. Let's put it that way. But it was the type of job I did well because I knew great detail. Let's put it that way. Okay, so we start out in the morning briefing, and I get up there, and I'm going to go through the emergency, and I'll tell you what it is here in just a second. And, of course, the thing about it is I'm in the front of the room, and the poor scheduler is in the back of the room. And what happens is if the student, you call on them and they screw it up, well, there goes the schedule for the day. And it'd be funny. I'd be up there, and the one scheduler we had, it was a real good guy, and he knew that this was going down, and he would just walk up there and he'd flip the name tag sideways, and it was like before I'd even grounded him. And I'm trying not to laugh up there, but okay, I call out the scenario. Okay, so the flight commander tells me I've got to ground this guy now. It's the military. He didn't say this is an order, but, captain to lieutenant, I kind of knew where he was going. And, this guy was going to be grounded. He wanted to take his ego down a notch. And when you stand up in front of the whole class and you screw up the emergency, get it wrong, basically, it's embarrassing. It's a notch to your ego, and that's what he wanted to do to this guy. Okay, this guy was sharp. He was a good pilot. He was very intelligent, but he had an attitude problem. And so I picked an emergency that actually wasn't an emergency. That's kind of the fun thing about it. It's a gotcha of sorts, but it's delves and has to do with all your system knowledge. And this had actually happened to my neighbor across the street there. He was a senior captain, had been in Vietnam. I think he flew A1s or something. I mean, this guy had been around. He was an experienced pilot. He was no novice. So, and this thing happened to him in the T-37. So I thought, okay, this is a good scenario. I was pretty confident that I was going to be able to get this guy on it. And the thing about it is, you kind of call on the entire class before you cycle around. So given the class size, it was going to be like 2 weeks before I'd even have the opportunity to come back around and ask this guy another question. And if I did sooner than that, it would be obvious that I was picking on him, and he'd complain about that. Okay, and so it had to be good. I had to get him the first time. Okay, so I gave him a scenario. Okay, you're flying the T-37, you come down initial here, you pitch out. As you pitch out, you come back around. You get on inside downwind there, wings level, speed brake out, and you get below 150 knots, and you put the gear handle down. Now, we had this little mnemonic thing, handle horn, lights, pressure. Anybody who's been a T-37 guy has that memorized, just like the single spin recovery throttles. I'm not going to go through it. Okay, but anyway, okay, so the deal is you put the gear handle down. Okay, you hear the gear warning horn. It comes on and it goes off. Lights. There's a red light in the handle that indicates that the gear is unlocked. The light comes on and then it goes off. And then the lights are the 3 green, and then the pressure is that the hydraulic pressure has come back up after the gear goes down, because the hydraulic pressure goes down as the gear goes down because they're loading that. Okay, that's the handle horn light pressure. So I tell them you pitched out, you're getting ready to put the gear down, you got the speed, you put the handle down. Okay, sun's kind of coming in. You don't really see the light in the gear handle, the red light. It doesn't show up for some reason, but you think, well, maybe that's the sun or something. You get the horn, the gear warning horn. It comes on, and then it goes off. But you look over to the 3 green, and there's no 3 green. They're all blank. And, okay, so you don't have that lights, but the hydraulic pressure comes back up, which kind of indicates that the gear kind of should have come down, and you felt it and you heard it, and so what are you going to do? And he says, well, I would ask the supervisor of flying. He's down there kind of watching, make sure the gear's down, stuff like that. And he's going to the mobile control unit, excuse me, the supervisor of flying is the guy back at the squadron who's higher up. But the controller down there, you're going to ask him. He says, well, I'll do a flyby and see if the gear's down. I go, okay. You do a flyby, and he says, well, it looks like they're down, but it's kind of hard to tell. He's got the binoculars and everything. It does look like they're down, but you say, well, you still don't have any green lights at all. No green lights at all. And I said, what are you going to do? He says, well, I'd go out to get kind of a safe area, and then I'd get my checklist out for the landing gear emergency. Okay, so we got the landing gear emergency here, and okay, so what do you got? He says, well, obviously I don't have the gear properly extended, so I'm going to have to do the landing gear emergency extension. And you see at the bottom right hand there, that's the little red handle there, and I'm going to show you something about that. He says, okay, I'd go through this procedure, airspeed 150 knots or below, landing gear level is down, and now I'm going to, pull and twist and pull this handle and hold it. And this is, it's a pneumatic bottle, and I mean, the gear comes, if the gear's not down, it just bangs into position. It's very forceful, and you can really feel it. And I say, okay, you pull that out, nothing happens. You still don't have 3 green. And he goes, well, I'm not sure. And okay, I decided I'd give the guy a little bit of a chance here. I said, okay, well, are you sure the lights work? And he goes, oh, I'll press to test. And I said, okay, you press to test all of them, and they press to test, and you get green lights on all of them. I said, well, what are you going to do now? And he goes, well, I would go through the landing with a gear malfunction. And he says, okay, I would have I would tell him to foam the runway. And I go, really? You're going to have him foam the runway? I mean, that's very expensive and stuff. And are you really sure that you've got a gear problem? And okay, let's have a little expansion here. There is, it says when a throttle is retarded to between idle and approximately 70% RPM, and the gear is not down and locked, the light will illuminate, and the warning signal will send an audio tone to both the pilot and instructor's headset. This is the gear warning horn. The warning lights can be checked by pressing each test switch. Okay, that's here. That's number 4. There's a little test switch that you can press to check the landing gear lights, and you press that, and it works. I go, so you press that, the lights work. Now what are you going to do? And he says, well, I'd have the runway foam. And I go, okay, you're absolutely certain the gear's not down and locked. And he says, yes, I don't have 3 green, so it means the gear is not down and locked. And I said, okay, how about you get out your -1? And let's open up to the page here and let's take a real close look at the landing gear emergency T-handle. Now I asked you, did you try everything you could try? And you said, yes, you did. Well, there's a little switch here. And, okay, you look down now, and you happen to see that it says the switch is in the position dim. That's for night flying. Now, here's what would have happened, okay? You have the runway foamed, you come in, you land nicely, nothing happens, and then the wing commander comes over because he comes out in, this is a serious emergency, a gear problem, you could really damage the airplane. He comes out and he looks in there and he sees that the light switch is on dim, and he takes it and he moves it up to bright, which is the normal setting when you're going to go fly. And guess what happens? You get all 3 green. Your switch was out of position. You are grounded. Okay, so the guy sets down, the scheduler takes some name off. He isn't really happy. Now, okay, what's going to happen here now? Well, okay, once you're grounded like this, at the end of the day, I am going to give you an oral. This is what any student who's grounded, the Stanovel officer gives them an oral at the end of the day, and if they pass it, they can get back on. So I tell them, well, I think you better study your -1 a little bit more, and we'll have an oral here. Okay, the guy's had his ego notched down a little bit. I get a nice thumbs up from the flight commander in the back of the room, and I've done the job. Well, let's talk about what happened the next day. Well, at the end of the day, actually. That gets a little interesting. Hey, thanks for watching. Stay tuned to part 2. I think you'll enjoy it. It'll be tomorrow.